a second to switch over.
Councilmember Banks will be here in about 5 minutes.
Thank you. Let's see, Councilmember Wynn. Hey, Cindy. I think Councilmember.
Hey,
I think I saw Councilmember.
sorry I'm late. Was on another board meeting.
You're not late.
Oh, okay, good.
Good afternoon, Councilmember Brissett. This is No Sep. We're just doing the mic checks.
Mic check 1, 2. Good afternoon, Mr. Antoine.
Good afternoon, sir.
Colonel Ebert. See Ms. Mellum. Hey, Kristen. Councilmember Palmer has joined. All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. I'm joined with Councilmember Palmer and Councilmember Wynn, and Councilmember Banks will be on shortly. Good afternoon and welcome to the Council's Emergency Preparedness and Cybersecurity Special Committee. Ms. Erin Spears, please call a roll.
Sure. Councilmember Brissett, Chair, President. Councilmember Giarrusso. Councilmember Banks. Councilmember Gilselson Palmer.
Here.
Councilmember Wynn.
Here.
Councilmember, we have 3 members. We don't yet have a quorum, but as you know, we have the 15-minute recess.
Thank you, Ms. Spears. Ms. Nicole Kondo will read the agenda in its entirety. Afterwards, we will take a 10-minute recess to receive public comment. While there will not be a vote today at today's meeting, we will still, of course, accept public comment. And to submit public comment, I'm asking you to visit council.nola.gov. Public comments are limited to 2 minutes, read out loud, and the comments must be germane to the agenda. Ms. Kondo will read the comments for each item, and at the end of that presentation. With that, we will now take a 10-minute break for public comments. Ms. Spears, it's 1:05, correct?
Sorry, I was muted. Yes, sir. Did you want Nicole to read the agenda first?
Yes. Thank you for that.
No problem.
1, roll call. 2, approval of minutes from June 2nd, 2020. 3, presentation, COVID-19 response. The committee will receive an update on the city's COVID-19 response, including how the city will manage special events and plans to establish a citywide mass vaccination program. To present, Colonel Terry Ebert, USMC retired Director, Public Safety and Homeland Security, and Michael Antoine, Deputy Director, New Orleans Office of Homeland Security and Emergency Preparedness. 4, presentation, LCMC Health Vaccination Plan. To present, Dr. Jeffrey Elder, Director of Emergency Preparedness Operations, and Ayame Dinkler, Chief Administrative Officer. 5, adjournment.
Thank you, Ms. Kondo. And we will now take that 10-minute break for public comments. It is 1:06, probably about to be 1:07.
Thank you, Councilman. See you soon. Hey, everyone, we're back in about 2 minutes. Councilmember, it's 1:17.
Right. With that, that ends our public comment period time. Ms. Spears, would you please reestablish quorum?
Certainly. Councilmember Brosette, Chair, present. Councilmember Jeruso. Councilmember Banks. Present. Councilmember Gustafson Palmer.
Here.
Councilmember Nguyen.
Here.
Councilmember Moreno. All right, Councilmember, we have 4 members. We have a quorum.
Thank you. If we now could, the item number 2, have a motion to approve the minute.
So moved.
So, second.
Moved by Councilmember Banks and seconded by Councilmember Nguyen. All in favor?
Aye.
Hearing no opposition, 4 yeas, 0 nays, and the minutes are approved. Thank you. Our first presentation is from Colonel Terry Ebert, Director of Public Safety and Homeland Security, and Mr. Michael Antoine, Deputy Director of New Orleans Office of Homeland Security and Emergency Preparedness. Colonel Ebert and Deputy Director Antoine will provide us with a comprehensive update on how Homeland Security is responding and will continue to respond to the COVID-19 pandemic. We are all optimistic that with the increasing availability of vaccines, an end to the pandemic is in sight, cross fingers. However, it is imperative that we not let our guard down. We must continue to observe social distancing and masking for everyone's health. Just as we must maintain personal vigilance, so too must the city as we continue to respond and adapt to new public safety demands. For this reason, I've invited our top Homeland Security personnel to today's committee meeting to share with us comprehensive update on the city's efforts to continue to keep our residents, our businesses, and visitors safe. And so with that, if any of my colleagues don't have any introductory remarks, I will turn it over to Colonel Ebert and Deputy Director Antoine. Good afternoon. Colonel, I believe you're on mute.
Can you hear me?
Yes, yes, sir.
Okay. We, first of all, I want to thank everybody for taking the time this afternoon to allow us to walk through a rather long journey that takes us back over a year's period of time, and an opportunity to talk about the men and women of the public safety agencies throughout the city who have worked tirelessly over the past year to provide public safety issues, resolve the issues, and provide the support needed to deal with the COVID-19 response. These men and women don't work from home. Many of them will work 24/7 through many endless emergencies over the past year and continue to do so as we provide the public safety platform and the public safety services needed to get us to the end of the line. One emergency declaration after another has been the practice rather than, as we would all like, a lesser number spread over a larger period of time. This is their story. Please feel free at any time as we go through this to ask questions. This is meant to answer questions and provide any data that you as the members of the council need and support. But again, it's a long story. It's been a long time. We've learned a lot as we've proceeded, but we are lucky and blessed with a great staff across our agencies, from the leadership from the mayor on down to the troops in the field and all these agencies to work together to provide the support that we need. What I'd like to do is kick off this morning for this afternoon with the COVID-19 response brief, and Mike will kick that off. And again, don't wait. If you have any questions, we'll provide those answers as we go along. Thank you, Councilman.
Thank you, Colonel.
All right, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Sorry, sir, go ahead. All right, good afternoon, Councilmember Brooksett and team. The Colonel just kind of gave you all a broad overview of what the office has been doing as far as our COVID response, and I'm going to kind of delve into some of the specific operations that this office has been managing for over a year now. So from a planning perspective, NOSEP emergency managers continue to assist planning for future vaccine sites. Also, the testing sites, the management of and operation of those sites has been ongoing since March of 2020 and remains ongoing. One of the most important things that we're doing is getting ready to enter another hurricane season during the global pandemic. As we all can recall, last year in 2020, the Southeast Louisiana, to be specific, was threatened by 8 different named storms in the 2020 season. 2 of those storms we're currently still working open declarations here in the city. One of those is Hurricane Laura, as you all can remember, we had that hit Southwest Louisiana, and we, as a city, stepped up and sheltered some of our residents, our citizens from Southwest Louisiana, up to 12,000 at one point. Currently, we still have about 400 of those residents still residing in the city of New Orleans at the Sheraton Hotel, and we maintain consistent communication with the state as far as long-term housing options for those residents. Another thing we're doing is coordinating and making some enhancements to our CAE plan. We're already getting talks from the National Weather Service and National Hurricane Center that there may be a chance for an earlier hurricane season this year, looking at the middle of May versus our normal June 1st. So we're preparing for that as well and looking at ways to optimize our registration process for our city-assisted evacuation plan, as well as looking at ways to optimize access to transportation. That way residents have adequate transportation to get to an evacuation spot or get to our parish pickup point to be processed out for evacuation. We're also still working Hurricane Zeta. We have a FEMA liaison who's present in the EOC with us and has been with us for about 3 weeks now. And we're working individual assistance for residents who received any storm damage to their homes and properties during Hurricane Zeta. Currently, we have 5,500 residents that have signed up for individual assistance in reference to Hurricane Zeta. Any questions on that, sir? The next one, Laura. Next slide. From a logistics standpoint, we continue to manage and receive the delivery of critical COVID-related supplies and equipment, including the city's weekly vaccine allotment for all our public safety personnel, as well as members of the public. And all COVID-related purchases for the city departments and agencies has been funneled through NOSEP's warehouse for proper accountability, documentation, and distribution. For donations, we've managed up into 2 million units of PPE, and also about 6 million in donations collected from nonprofits, some of our corporations, as well as some of our residents here in the city has contributed donations for PPE, cleaning supplies, sanitization materials, and things of that nature. Next slide, please. From the operations standpoint, NOSEP continues to coordinate operations related to COVID response, including managing the ongoing COVID-19 meal plan program, which I would like to note was the first in the country to ever stand up a mass feeding program of this sort. And through NOLA Ready, we continue to manage our volunteer corps, which recruits, train, and manages our non-medical volunteer to support not only our vaccine sites, but our 311 call center and any and all of our community canvassing efforts that we're doing throughout the city. So we're issuing door hangers, we're passing out flyers, we're trying to educate the public as much as we can on the importance of getting vaccines.
Thank you, Mr.
We also, on that point, I'm sorry, sir, do you have a question?
On the volunteer corps, thank you for what you just stated. Just wondering how many volunteers for COVID response efforts do you need in total for the NOLA Ready Volunteer Corps, specifically the upcoming mass vaccination sites? I guess you could,
thank you, Council.
you could answer how many we need in total and how many for that particular effort.
Thank you for that, Councilmember. So we have over 2,000 volunteers who have registered with us. Not all of them have completed all of the required training for vaccine sites, but we're really excited to see that amount of interest from our residents. As Mike said, we've already had about 400 of those people actually working at the New Orleans Health Department vaccine sites for the last 5 weeks or so. But as you mentioned, we really anticipate ramping up that effort once the mass vaccination site opens at the convention center. So I don't have an exact number that we're recruiting for, but I think this is going to be a long-term effort. And so we would really at least like to double those numbers. It's going to be, daily shifts, weekend shifts. So anybody in the community who's interested in volunteering in really what was going to be a historic effort, you don't have to have any particular skills. If you're 18 and older, you can take a couple online training courses and be ready to help get your neighbors vaccinated. And all of that information is available at our website, ready.nola.gov/volunteer.
Thank you, Laura. Just to add to that, Councilmember, just in 2020, we had volunteers worked over 3,000 hours in COVID test sites. And just so far in 2021, we've already had volunteers exceed 2,000 hours working our vaccination site. So Laura continued that campaign, and it's really robust, and it's been a huge success for us. Also, with all of this process is going on, we also managed the resource center for 2 weeks in the convention center, which provided critically needed supplies and resources to our Southwest Louisiana evacuees, including baby formula, hygiene kits, supplies, and just a lot of resources to get those folks on a path to recovery. We stood that up from the city of New Orleans, managing that with NOLA Ready volunteers as well, issuing tens of thousands of resources during the evacuation, the citizens we housed during Hurricane Laura. So just to add another component of that volunteer core and how we maximizing and using that to the best of our ability.
I'd like to add to that, just to remind everybody the scope of having multiple thousands of volunteers, the assurance that they are properly accounted for, properly trained, properly scheduled on a continuing basis is a massive effort. Those of you who've dealt with large numbers of people can realize when your team is 2,000 or more individuals, those and the proper accounting in this very, very technical environment and is essential to all of us. And we're blessed by a city that has stepped forward and offered the assistance to help those government employees manage the job that we've been given.
And if I could just point out one more thing about the volunteer program, if you'll remember, council members, in June of last year, we let you know that we would be creating this in-house volunteer program, and that was primarily with the idea of helping with evacuation. So this is sort of replacing the long-standing relationship we had with Evacuteer. They did great work for the 10 years that we were working with them, but I think this is really just helps to illustrate how important this role is, that it's, we haven't actually had to use these folks for evacuation, but we've been able to plug them into other public safety efforts in the pandemic response.
And if someone is interested, thank you, Mr. Antoine, Mr. Ebert, Colonel Ebert, and Ms. Mellon. If someone's interested, you say you can go to ready.nola.gov and volunteer.
That is correct. You'll have to register in our volunteer system, and there's just a few trainings you'll take.
Now I'm thinking
Jared,
you all may have done this, Councilmember Banks.
please, just a couple of quick questions. Is there a minimum commitment that folks have to make to be a volunteer? Or if they can give a day, is that something we want? Or do they have to commit to 10 days? Or is there a specific time frame that we are asking people to commit to?
So right now it's pretty simple. You don't need to do any sort of commitment. If all you need to do is take the 3 vaccination trainings, and then our volunteer coordinator, Shalini Prasad, will send out a weekly update of the shifts that are open, and you can sign up for the shifts that are available that you're trained for. So I'll give you a few examples of what folks have been doing so far. Just sort of a basic example is at a volunteer pod that the New Orleans Health Department is running. A non-medical volunteer with our Corps can sign up for about a 4 to 6 hour shift, and they'll be assigned a role like greeting people or helping with registration. And then we do also have volunteers who are at the 311 call center, and they're actually calling people who are on our wait list to get them scheduled for upcoming vaccination appointments. So you'll get trained on site about what your particular role will be that day, but you can volunteer with us once, you can come back every week. It's really kind of open to what people are available for.
And do the volunteers have the ability to be able to say, I want to be a telephone operator, or I want to be a greeter, or do you just assign them as needed, or can you pick the lane you want to run in?
You can certainly pick the location where you're going to volunteer. So if you would prefer to just be at the call center, you know, that's especially a good place for folks who might be a little bit more concerned about COVID exposure. If you're worried about that, you can be in a small setting like the call center. You will be assigned a role at a vaccination site. You can certainly say to our coordinator that you're not comfortable with something and you'd rather do something else, and we will work with you. And I would just also like to note that we separately have a medical reserve corps that's run by the New Orleans Health Department. So if anyone who's listening has medical expertise, you can sign up to volunteer in that capacity and actually have a more medical role at a vaccination site.
And that was a segue to my next question. Do you have to have any special skill set in order to be able to volunteer, or is this open to everyone? And what's the age that it's open to?
So if you do have a special skill set, you know, related to the medical field, we would love to plug you into the Medical Reserve Corps. That is a need that we have ongoing, especially at some of the community-based vaccine sites. But for the regular NOLA Ready Volunteer Corps, there's no particular skill set that you would need to have outside of just taking the vaccine trainings that we offer. Right now, we are asking the volunteers are 18 years and older. And if you have any language skills, if you're a Spanish speaker or Vietnamese speaker, there's a place on the form to indicate that, and we might ask you to use your language skills at some sites.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Banks. I know we are joined too by Council President Helena Moreno. Welcome. Ms. Mellum, if you could also give us how you, the department is reaching out to potential volunteers, our colleges and universities, as I'm thinking that this is would likely be something that is equal to a college credit for their volunteerism. And I know at the beginning, you and Mr. Antoine said the numbers needed to be ratcheted up from the 400 that is currently properly trained.
Yes, absolutely, Councilmember. If there are a good number of volunteers in our Corps who are coming from colleges and universities, and I think we'll absolutely continue to work with local schools to get more folks involved. It's a great point.
And I didn't hear you say it, forgive me if you did. How long does the training take on average for an interested volunteer?
So we offer 3 trainings that are required for a volunteer in the non-medical role. The first is just sort of an overview of a vaccination pod and what to expect. That's about 30-minute online training. These are all on demand, by the way. And then there's a second, about 20-minute long on-demand training that it covers HIPAA and what's protected. As a volunteer, you may have access to people's health information, so how to properly handle that. And then thirdly, we are requiring ICS 100. That's a FEMA course that you can take online that provides a basic overview of the incident command structure, so you understand what you're plugging into at a vaccine site and how the command structure works. That's a little bit longer of a training. I would say that takes about an hour or so. And then you'll just need to provide proof to us that you've completed that training.
All right, so roughly 3 courses, 3 steps pretty much to complete the volunteer requirements.
Yes, Councilmember, that's correct.
It'd be done probably in 1 day.
Jared, one final question, please. Do the volunteers who are going to be working at the vaccination sites, do they have to be vaccinated, or will they get vaccinated if they work at the sites?
So volunteers are not, they're certainly not required to be vaccinated, and working at a vaccine site will not guarantee you a vaccine. You know, sort of depending on the situation, some volunteers have been vaccinated. If there's leftover doses, they are considered to be part of healthcare personnel that are responding to the COVID-19 pandemic.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Banks.
All right, Lord, next slide.
Yeah, no other questions. Move to the next slide.
So on this next slide, we're going to get into the kind of the finance piece related to COVID and no steps role in that. Of course, COVID-related expenses continue to be centrally managed through the city's Emergency Operations Center. We are currently have been since the start of the pandemic managing all procurements for all city departments. As we are aware, on February 2nd, President Biden signed an executive order allowing 100% of eligible costs from the beginning of the pandemic through September 30th. So we continue to work with PDU, the CA's office, and finance to make sure that we're tracking and documenting and submitting all eligible expenses for reimbursement through the state and, of course, through FEMA. I think we have Mr. Lyman, who's on the line, to kind of walk us through the chart. Mr. Lyman, are you on?
I am. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Great. Thank you, council members, for the invitation. Yes, I want to just add a little clarity to the slide. You'll notice in the chart provides information related to our CARES Act reimbursement. With respect to FEMA eligible expenditures, that's a separate program, right? I just want to make sure we're all clear on that. With respect to the FEMA eligible expenditures, that's regarding PPE, all of those things that the city did in terms of expenditures related to mitigating the spread of COVID during the pandemic, PPE, shields, you name those expenditures that the city incurred for those types of items. With respect to FEMA related expenditures, we have about $3 million worth of related to PW that has been submitted already. 2 million have been submitted. About $700,000 in terms of an amendment will be submitted as well. For PPE, as far as the mass feeding program, we have about $18 million that's already been submitted with amendments on the table to be submitted of about $2.6 million for the mass feeding program, and not potentially, but an additional $6 million will be submitted with respect to the mass feeding program as well to bring it up to date as far as our submissions there. The chart on this particular slide is in reference to the CARES Act reimbursement. You'll see that we submitted as a city about $132 million of requests that we believe were eligible expenditures under CARES. The state approved roughly $130 million of those expenditures. To date, we have received $59 million in reimbursements for our CARES Act submissions, and we have a carry forward available of about $70.1 million of unreimbursed eligible expenditures under the CARES Act. Now, as I appreciated at this point, the only expenditures that the federal government under Biden has approved for additional reimbursement are those related to the FEMA eligible expenditures through September 30th, 2021. As it relates to the carry forward that are available, it is available under the CARES Act eligible expenditures. I'm not aware, and we're not aware, that any of the current legislation is addressing those expenditures and those that carry forward amount over and above the amount that was reimbursed under CARES. Now that $70 million relates and refers only to eligible expenditures through September 30th, 2020 under the CARES Act. So hopefully I was able to provide some clarity to this particular slide. If not, I'm certainly willing to answer some questions you might have.
Mr. Lyman, why so much of tranche 2 is remaining outstanding?
Well, so that's tranche 2. So remember in previous presentations, the state determined the exact amount that would be reimbursable to the city. It may or may not have covered our eligibility submitted expenditures, and that's the reason for the remaining amount due. So to the extent that our eligible expenditures exceeded what the state said was available to us as a city, that's the excess amount of approved and eligible expenditures. That's what that number represents. So as you might imagine, the $70 million is a very large sum. And if you remember early on in the legislative process at the state level, if you remember, the state took about $300 million off the top of the money that was available and was supposed to be dedicated to cities for their use. And if you remember, that money, that $300 million, at least $275 million of it was contributed to the Road Home program that was administered by the Treasurer's Office. And another 50 million or so was administered by the Department of Revenue. And those funds were distributed to our first responders. So had that $300 million not been taken out of the city's appropriation or designated fund, the city could have gotten a little bit more of the $71 million that we exceeded in allowable reimbursements. Any additional questions? Thank you all so much. I appreciate it.
All right, at this time, we'll move to one of our most important pieces of this, which is our public information and what are we doing to engage and maintain constant communications with the community. So, of course, NOLA Ready continues to be the hub for COVID-19 information for the city. Residents can access information related to vaccines, current guidelines, and also available resources at our website, ready.nola.gov/COVID-19, on any of our social media outlets at NOLA Ready, or by texting COVID NOLA to 888-777. We also launched our Sleeves Up NOLA campaign to provide vaccine information and to get our residents excited about the COVID-19 vaccinations. Next slide. All right, at this time, I think we have safety and permits coming in to speak about special events, and we'll be online to support as necessary.
Thank you, Mr. Antoine. Ms. Jackson? Well, Mr. Antoine, while you're there, can you tell us as it relates to from NOSEP's side of special events, what preparations have you all made or making to prepare for the St. Patrick's Day and Easter? Do you anticipate any special messaging for those?
So our preparedness measures are actually going to be based on what events are approved via the health department and safety and permits. We can manage and prepare for anything that's approved, but basically we'll scale and tailor our plans to whatever is being approved in the city at that time.
I'll add to that, it's not just the first few events that count. As we will move forward through the spring and into the summer and fall, we have to work as a team across the city agencies to ensure we got the capability to manage and support these major events on a continuing basis. We already walked through the process of knowing what our budget restrictions are, the size of our organizations, and their capability. We have to take that capability and divide it up to ensure that we can supply the support, especially the police, fire, EMS, debris cleanup, those type of things that go with these events. And in the past, we may have been able to stack 4-day weekends one after another, but we're not going to have the depth of the budget process to be able to do that type of function. So in the process of scheduling and approving and permitting these events, we're going to have to work with the sponsors and with the city agencies to ensure that we've got adequate available hours of employees in the respective departments to cover the requirements. So this is a great challenge as we come out of this, and we're meeting on a continuing basis in special events, and we'll continue to do so, but it will be adapting to the requirements from our end, and then on their end, adapting their requirements to our availability. So it's going to take a team effort between the sponsors and the city agencies to make sure that we can bring this back one event at a time in a safe manner.
Thank you, Colonel and Mr. Antoine. Ms. Jackson?
Good afternoon. Special events is housed in safety and permits. And I want to also introduce Ms. Ashley Becknell, who needs no introduction, who has been instrumental in working with Reopening Safe, our committee. As of February 26th, the modified phase 2 guidelines have changed, and the gathering size is now 75 for indoors and 150 people outdoors. And special events must comply with these gathering sizes. The general permitting process remains the same. Applications come in through the one-stop app and are routed through LLAMA. Permits are granted for a 10-day period and extended up to 6 months in order to make the process more convenient for local businesses and culture bearers. And all special events and live entertainment require permits to ensure all COVID guidelines are followed. Permits are reviewed by the health department to ensure a gathering size limit, social distancing, mask enforcement, other rules are going to be followed. They also get approval through NOPD as well. So it is going through a committee, and the checks are made throughout. And as you know, the council sees them as well. And we are currently preparing for St. Patrick's Day, Easter, and graduations. We believe that graduations will be able to occur this year, and we will be releasing specific guidelines for these events very soon.
Mr. Chair?
Next slide. I think someone had a question.
Councilmember Paul, are you?
Yes, I did. Thank you. I'm sorry. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Great. Could you go back to that last slide about special events? I'm just trying to figure out, so permits, could you go a little bit deeper into permits are granted for a 10-day period? and extended then to 6-month periods. What does that exactly account for? Like if I'm having a special event and I require alcohol, right? On one weekend, are you then granting me the ability to do it every single weekend for 6 months?
Well, we want you to update us on what you are doing, right? So that's why initially it's a 10-day period. And the 10-day period is saying, like for live entertainment, specifically for hotels or event spaces that have live entertainment. So we want to know initially, what are you applying for a permit for? And so that's why it's a 10-day period. And then we want to know, hey, what is this event entail? And the reason why we do it for the 10-day period is because the restrictions may change, right? And everything that is issued is based on the current restrictions. Does that answer your question, Councilmember Palmer?
No, I'm sorry. I'm trying to figure it out. Like, okay, say for instance, I am a restaurant, right, with outdoor seating. And no, not even that. Just say like I'm a venue, you know, like, I don't know, a bookstore, and I want to have a little bit of entertainment on a Sunday with live entertainment in the courtyard, okay? So, but I only want to do it one day. But by getting this permit for this one weekend, say, I now have the ability to do it for 6 months instead of just one weekend?
Well, when you apply for the permit, you identify if you have it for the one day, it's for that one day of event. This is only for venues, as you initially suggested, like the restaurants or venues that are planning to continue to have events.
Okay, so then if they say on the permit that they can do it for a weekend, they're asking for the permit for like Saturday and Sunday, they could then do it for Saturday and Sunday for 6 months.
It's according to what they apply for. Remember, so if they apply for the one-day event, that's what we're issuing the permit for. But we're saying for those locations that are having recurring events, that's the convenience was created for those types of venues.
Well, for instance, in some neighborhoods, you get a special event permit because you want to have one day a week, like a Sunday brunch, and you want to have a little bit of entertainment. And it clearly, you know, so you get that special event permit for that one day. But but now that if you get it for 6 months, you can have it for every day during that 6-month period?
Well, wait, you said you apply and you want to have it one day a week?
Right.
Yes, and that in the 10 days is to make sure, like, we're trying to see if you're going to abide by the restrictions. Like if we get any complaints, then we know whether or not we're going to continue that for the 6-month period.
But what if you get a complaint after the 10-day period and you're already in the 6-month period? I'm sorry, I don't mean to push back. I'm not pushing back. I'm just saying a lot of times what happens, and you know this, it's harder to take away. Once somebody's granted a permit, it's harder to take it back.
Well, in this instance, because there are special permits, we would inform them if whatever violation isn't abated immediately, or if we continue to get the complaints, or we find that it's in violation on several times, the permit will be rescinded.
Okay. All right, sounds good. Thank you. And look, I do want it easier for folks to be able to do business, because it's very difficult sometimes to do business with the city, especially with all the different rules and guidelines.
Right, we heard you.
And we have to be flexible, right? Because I know that we may wind up having to go backwards, and then we go forward. So I do think it's smart. I'm just trying to get clarity for when, my district, we get special event permit requests all the time. So I'm just trying to make sure that we've got an understanding on how they operate.
Okay. All right, next slide. Okay, and outdoor live entertainment also may be permitted through a special event permit. No moving or stationary street closure permits are being issued. And that's been since, March of 2020. We have not issued those moving or stationary street closure permits. Porch concerts are something more recent, within the last 45 days, and they're available for free if certain conditions are met. It has to be a small event at someone's residence where there are no alcohol sales, no admission fees, and no structures being constructed, nor electrical changes made. The existence of any of those would get a porch concert denied, because you need, an additional permit to build a stage or something like that. So those are the requirements for porch concerts permits. Venues with active live entertainment mayoralty permits may apply for a certificate of registration in lieu of a special event permit. These certificates are free since the business has already paid for the mayoralty permit. And that's another thing that makes sense. We heard you loud and clear, as well as the business community. They're like, well, I already have this, I paid for this. Why would I need to pay for something additional? And it's like, no, we just want to make sure that we have awareness about all events, whether you have a mayoralty permit previously or not. And any applications and questions can be sent to special events at NOLA.gov or event permits at NOLA.gov. And generally they are responding within 48 hours or 72 hours on a weekend or something. They're very responsive. Okay. Next slide. Okay. And as far as enforcement, for large gatherings, they need to be reported to 311 or 911. And this is a police action for the large gathering. Safety and permits and code enforcement, we will handle complaints about businesses, short-term rentals, those items, but in conjunction with the police department. And that is to keep our associates safe, as well as to keep the general public safe. In code enforcement and safety and permits, our process is the code enforcement led by Winston Reed. He is boots on the ground. He will go to the businesses and, inspect for capacity concerns, whether or not liquor sales are occurring between the hours of 8 to 11 p.m. After 11 p.m., there are not supposed to be any liquor sales, as well as the other guidelines where you're supposed to be seated and serves alcohol, and making sure that, like our current guidelines are in place currently, 75 inside. And so he sends the violation. He finds a violation, he sends that violation to safety and permits. I, as the director of safety and permits, issue a cease order until they can actually present a safe reopening plan, which includes the layout of the business, as well as insurance that they will abide by the guidelines moving forward. We have had several businesses that have said, hey, we're just going to close until the restrictions are a little less restrictive. We've, found some businesses that didn't have the proper licenses, and they have applied for the proper licenses and our permits. As a first offense, like I said, generally it's a reopening plan. A second offense, it could take a little longer, as well as we have consulted with the Tobacco Control Commission. That has been very successful as well. Ashley Becknell, also the law department, has been very successful with coordinating with the state ATC to make sure that these businesses that aren't in compliances, they won't only have enforcement action through us, the local enforcement action, but also state enforcement action. And that concludes safety and permits presentation for special events, unless you have any questions.
Seeing no questions, we can move to the next slide. Thank you, Ms. Jackson and Ms. Becknell.
Thank you.
All right, on this slide, we'll talk about the mass vaccination logistics. Of course, NOSEP will continue to support New Orleans Health Department and our other agencies as the city begin to rev up its mass vaccination programs for our community. The health department will continue to be the drive of the mass vaccination planning, and NOCEP will continue to provide support in planning and operations as well, but also including our volunteer coordination, public information and messaging, receiving, storing, and distributions of vaccinations to our vaccine sites, and any site logistics support. The health department will continue to work with our local, state, and federal partners on selection of the vaccination sites, and NOCEP will provide any logistical or any other support needed to get those sites up and running. So pending any questions, council members, this kind of leads us right into our mass vaccination presentation from LCMC, Dr. Elder.
Thank you, Colonel Ebert and Director Antoine. And just this site logistical work that you all will do and have currently been doing. Am I correct when I say that this is a reimbursable cost that y'all are notating for to be picked up by the federal government?
Yes, sir, absolutely. We currently are tracking any and all volunteer hours, employees' hours worked, as well as any equipment used through our force account labor and force account equipment forms, which is the forms used to apply for reimbursement via FEMA. So yes, sir.
And I think to add to that, it's taken a tremendous effort on the part of all the city government to do the work of tracking in the detailed manner which will ensure the acceptance by the federal government. This is not easy. We're tracking individual hours that turn into millions of dollars. So it takes a lot of effort from not only the employee, but the supervisors and the department heads and the team here at City Hall to make this work. It requires the cooperation of virtually everybody in the city.
And thank you, Colonel. And to date, how many people we have signed up through NOLA already?
Councilmember, we have about 45 to 50,000 people who have signed up for the COVID NOLA text. So we continue, like we have for the past year, to send out texts on pretty much a daily basis about case numbers, any policies regarding guideline changes, and now, of course, a lot of those text messages focus on vaccines. Separately, we do have this 311 citywide vaccine wait list, and I believe we have over 10,000 people on that list, the vast majority of whom are not yet eligible to receive vaccine, but we have been using a separate text and email service to communicate with people on that wait list, connecting them to appointments.
And you say that's roughly about 10,000 people who are not eligible that's on the wait list?
There's 10,000 people-ish total on the wait list, and I would say maybe between 6,000 to 8,000 of them are not yet eligible. We've had about 5,000 people in the eligible category, and we actually have volunteers going through that list today, removing people who have already received their vaccine. So we should have better numbers by the end of the week about how many people we've actually been able to connect with a vaccine appointment.
Yeah, that was my next question. If you could update us via email at the end of the week when y'all have those numbers finalized of how many people NOCEP has supported through the vaccine list. And I think you just said roughly 5,000, but y'all cleaning that list up, correct?
Yes, that's right. And if I could just take a moment to plug this vaccine wait list, I think, we've seen it's this degree of difficulty some individuals have had to, getting on multiple wait lists with various pharmacies. And really our goal with this was to try to have a more centralized registration system. So you may get an appointment from the New Orleans Health Department. We also have some partner providers that are scheduling appointments through the vaccine wait list, including Tulane University. Some of the local FQHCs are using the vaccine wait list if they have leftover doses at the end of the day, either from angel doses or from patient no-shows. And then when we know of large-scale organizations that are doing mass vaccinations where a lot of appointments would be available, we're sending a text message to people on the wait list. So an example would be last week we knew that the Bullard Walmart was going to have thousands of vaccine appointments available in the next few days. So we were able to connect people to those appointments. So we expect to continue to do this. Obviously, this is a changing environment, especially as we see the increase in product with the Johnson & Johnson vaccine and likely the expanded eligibility that will come in the weeks to come. So we'll certainly continue to try to adjust this wait list as necessary, but for now I would just say anyone who's interested in getting more information and being connected with the vaccine in New Orleans should sign up for that wait list.
Thank you. And it may be helpful to cover all bases, may be helpful, I know, with the senior population to cross-reference the mass feeding program, which I know you all are in control of that list as well, that registration list, to see who might need to be vaccinated as well.
Yes, and actually that mass feeding program resides in the same 311 sort of system. So actually Tyrell Morris has been able to send messages to people 65 and older who are on the meal program to try to get them on the wait list. And we'll continue to do that as additional eligibility opens up.
Thank you. Councilmember Nguyen.
Yeah, thank you, Councilmember Brissett. Laura, thank you for the presentation. And I also wanted to express my appreciation to your team in reference to working with us. I know we've been in communication about the vaccine and the 311 list. Can you share in reference to if one would register on 311, what is the average wait if they are eligible to take the vaccine? How fast are we connecting them to a vaccine location?
So it's really kind of difficult to say just because of the changing landscape each week of vaccines in Orleans Parish. But I will say sort of anecdotally that I've heard a number of people who had been on multiple wait lists from other singular providers who were able to either immediately schedule an appointment through the 311 system or were able to, get a vaccine appointment within days of being on this wait list. So I certainly can't make that promise. And again, it really depends on the amount of vaccine that's in the parish every week. But we are trying to sort of serve that role to connect people as quickly as possible. And I think the other thing I would note is that the wait list is really helpful too to sort of look at geography. So for example, last weekend, we had a vaccine pod at Xavier University. There were a few Angel doses at the end of the day. We were able to look at the vaccine list to see who lived in that area and would be able to get there quickly to get those extra doses. So that's really useful to us as well.
Just for information, so the Walmart off of Bullard, they're doing it again this weekend like they did last weekend. 1,000 dosage, so I'm pretty sure they got some super referral from you guys as well as from the community, but they will be setting up this Thursday. So it'll be so their weekend is going to be Thursday to Monday, and it's going to be from 8 to 4. It's the same procedure to register, and they are going to also have 2,000 vaccine for this upcoming weekend.
Thank you, Councilmember. We'll definitely push that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Nguyen. With that, thank you, Colonel Ebert, Deputy Director Antoine, and Ms. Mellon for presenting today. Seeing no other questions, we appreciate you presenting and the good work your team continue to do for the city of New Orleans.
I want to thank each and every council member for their support, because this is an all hands effort, and without your support back in your neighborhoods, we can't make this work. So thanks again.
Thank you. Our second presentation, I'm sorry, we have a public comment. Do we have public comment, Ms. Kondo?
Yes, Councilmember, we have one public comment from Wanda Dampier. She's not a paid representative. I desire to be informed and active on all business infrastructures, health protocols the public and elected officials are implementing throughout the course of discourse. Thank you. That ends the public comment.
Thank you, Ms. Kondo. We'll move to our next agenda item. Our second presentation addresses COVID vaccinations. In February, LCMC Health announced it will be hosting a mass vaccination site at the Moreno Convention Center. This would be the first mass vaccination site in Orleans Parish and the first federally funded mass vaccination site in Louisiana. And to hear about the plans and to answer any questions, medical questions, we have Ayame Dinkler, Chief Administrative Officer for LCMC Health, as well as Dr. Jeffrey Elder, Director of Emergency Preparedness Operations for LCMC Health, two very familiar faces to city government. Thank you all.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and council members for inviting us today. Dr. Elder and I do not have slides, so you are stuck looking at us for the next few minutes. We're going to tag team on this discussion, and we'd love to quickly cover just some highlights of our hospital vaccinations to date. I'll talk a little bit about our school partnerships specifically, but we'll spend the majority of the time updating you on our exciting plans at the convention center, which you heard a little bit about last week, and you've already alluded to. We have some more detail to share. So I'll kick it over to Dr. Elder to give an overview of how we're doing on hospital vaccinations.
Sure. Thanks, Ayame. Thank you, council members, for having us today. So, I'll start with what we've been doing since the public vaccination program has opened up in Louisiana. And since, the beginning of January, when we really started getting our patients vaccinated, we've put out almost 60,000 vaccines into the community. And so, we're really proud of the work that we've been doing at our 6 hospital sites. So all of our LCMC hospitals in Orleans, Jefferson parishes have been scheduling patients to be vaccinated as they meet eligibility criteria. And so we have been filling those clinics, really on a daily basis, just, with the rate limiting step being the amount of vaccine that's available to get them vaccinated. And through that, again, we've given out about 60,000 vaccines thus far since the vaccines first became available, in mid-December. And we'll continue to do that. And people can go to lcmchealth.org for information about our vaccines. And so that kind of brings us to the next piece, which is the larger, site at the convention center. Before I get into that, I'll let Ayame talk a little bit about Thrive Kids and some of the partnership with Children's Hospital as we continue to not only vaccinate soon at this new site, but also we continue to vaccinate at our hospitals.
Thanks, Dr. Elder. So Thrive Kids is a really great partnership between Children's Hospital and some of our area's schools. It encompasses more than just COVID response and vaccine and testing, but COVID certainly sort of accelerated the partnerships there. It's everything from providing mental and behavioral health services, sports medicine, school-based virtual care, dedicated nurse hotline, those types of services. But we've really accelerated those efforts with COVID testing and the vaccine. And I'm proud to announce that last week, as soon as teachers were eligible for the vaccine, we were able to vaccinate nearly 3,000 school teachers and school support staff in a week, with a combination primarily driven out of NOLA public schools, but with some private schools as well in the area. So Children's has been rapidly just making sure that our teachers and school workers can remain safe and in the classroom. and COVID-free. I think what you'll hear from Dr. Elder, the common theme for us in how LCMC Health approaches our work is partnerships. And what you are about to hear from him is certainly a litany of partnerships that we really appreciate, not the least of which is with the City of New Orleans Health Department, with FEMA as the first FEMA granted site in the state, with our state partners, and with a lot of community organizations and public entities, including RTA, that are really helping us to make this operation a success. So I'll turn it back over to you, Dr. Elder, for some more details about the convention center.
Thanks, Jaime. Yeah, so council members, we announced last week about our Operation Getting That Number, which is our mass vaccination site at the convention center. And, we're happy that this week we've learned that the state will be receiving Johnson & Johnson vaccine, which will, again, expand the amount of vaccinations that we can give in the community. We did find out today that we will be receiving, several thousand vaccines. And so starting Thursday, we'll begin that process of vaccinating at the convention center. We actually have a group of approximately 700 that will actually vaccinate tomorrow at the convention center that we've already scheduled. This was a kind of a first kind of soft opening using our wait lists as well as wait lists with the City of New Orleans Health Department. We're able to fill in with eligible patients. And so we're going to actually start that tomorrow. And then we'll move into Thursday and the weekend with that Johnson & Johnson vaccine. We also hope to continue that into next week, depending upon the allocations. Again, with what comes in through allocations via the state and federal government, we will continue that into next week. And we expect that we'll be able to vaccinate a number of days next week as well. And so there will be some more information coming out on that soon. But we just received word literally right before, coming on with you about our allocation, that we'll be able to move forward. I would like to say, we've had a really close relationship with the New Orleans Health Department in working some of those lists and getting some of those people, ultimately scheduled to be vaccinated. Also, we've been working with the RTA. They have been extremely helpful. I have another meeting with them a little bit later this afternoon. But we're working on having shuttle service from some parts of the city, including some hub locations, to get people easily down to the convention center. We know for some it can be difficult to make it all the way down there. It's Hall J, so it's at the end of the convention center, and we've worked out some special routes with the RTA in order to get people down there. So that's really the key here is, we want this to be as easy as possible for patients to get vaccinated. We don't want people to have problems in obtaining the vaccine. It's tough enough that, we have to deal with allocation issues, on a weekly basis. And we know nationally there's just not enough vaccines for everyone that wants to be vaccinated. And so when someone's eligibility comes up and they're able to get scheduled, we want to make it as easy as possible for them to make it down to us to be vaccinated. I think the Johnson & Johnson vaccine is very helpful in the fact that it's a single dose vaccine. And it's really an extremely effective and safe vaccine. The studies, it's been tens of thousands of patients who are involved in these studies. And they've proven that this is an extremely efficacious vaccine. It keeps people from getting seriously ill. And more importantly, it keeps them out of the hospitals and it keeps them from dying. That's the key here. And we have to keep pushing that. We have to keep letting the public know that. And we'll continue to work with our partners, such as the New Orleans Health Department, to really reach out to as many communities as we can to get that education out there. We cannot understate enough how important it is to get people into the clinics to get them vaccinated. And as we receive more vaccines and there's more, slots available to get people in and make more appointments, it's just important that we continue to have the community understand how important this is and the enthusiasm to continue to be vaccinated. We've been opening up spots as we have vaccines available. And, we just see hundreds and thousands of people that are calling and wanting to be vaccinated as soon as possible. And so that's really important that we keep that up because that's the way we're going to get through this pandemic. And so I just want to thank, the city agencies that we've been working with, including the police department, as well as New Orleans EMS and the health department, in order to get this site up and running. And we'll be excited later this week to really get moving with it.
Thank you, Dr. Elder and Ms. Dinkler. I'm glad you touched on one of my questions was relative to transportation for individuals on the list, and how is that going to be advertised? And glad to hear that you've already began working with RTA and make this as seamless as possible to get people to the convention center, as well as, of course, you did mention, of course, the wait list that the city has developed, the health department, and partnering with what you all have. Will appointments be required? Do you foresee in the near future after you go through that wait list? And I believe, so that in advertisement to residents and on transportation.
Yeah,
sure.
yes, sir.
Jeff,
Oh, go
if
ahead.
you want me to touch on transportation, and then I'll
Sure.
kick it over to you on appointments. But those are great questions, Mr. Chairman. On the appointments, let me just preview that is one of the differentiators of this site and of many mass sites in the country, is that we are doing it by appointment, which we think is going to lead to a much faster and smooth, seamless process for the individual getting the vaccine. Certainly have heard stories of folks in other states waiting hours in line because it's first come, first serve. So we are trying to avoid that. With regard to transportation, that has been a really significant focus for us. We have partnered with RTA. We are still finalizing the exact stops with them. There will likely, in all likelihood, be at least 2 or 3 stops in the city, including the West Bank and New Orleans East, that serve as sort of hubs that have continuous service that are going to and from the convention center. And I have to say that the RTA has been phenomenal partners in every conversation we've had with them. They just understand those rides will be free for riders, by the way. They've got to get the normal fare to the hub, but once they get to the hub, it's free to and from the convention center. And again, that should be continuous service, so folks aren't having to wait. There are other transportation options that we are happy to look into for patients. RTA also has a paratransit service that we'll be utilizing if appropriate. And we're also partnering with some of the rideshare services, including Uber, that have committed to provide some vouchers for those who cannot afford or do not have a car and can't get to the site on their own. So again, we have approached our site with a lens of equity. Not everyone has a car. Not everyone has access to a car. We did not think that drive-through for Orleans Parish was the best option to really reach those vulnerable populations. And we're trying to think of everything as far as ways to get people to the convention center. And it absolutely will be advertised once we finalize the stops with RTA. And our support staff who are answering the calls and scheduling, if someone chooses to make a phone appointment through us rather than online, it'll be advertised that way as well.
I think definitely that's great to hear, especially with the interstate from New Orleans East, directly to the Annunciation exit, if that is the exit they so choose, but it's a direct shot. And even for our residents that are in Algiers, getting up on the Mississippi River Bridge and getting right back down at Chapatoulas will be seamless. Councilmember Banks, for question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a logistical question. People make appointments with all good intentions, and then the dog gets out the yard, or they get a flat, or they missed the bus or whatever, they can't make it. What do you all do with those doses that are not utilized in the time frame? Are you all going to have an overflow list, a wait list? Will there be opportunities for people who don't fall into the current criteria to come and wait in case there is someone who missed? How's that going to work?
So, one of the things is, by doing this appointment based and at a large scale, it gives us a little bit more flexibility than some of the smaller operations. And so the goal here will be, obviously, we'll have people with their appointments. I think that leads to a few things that we don't want to see. So that's, confusion, disappointment if you can't get a vaccine, and then long lines, because we obviously don't want people to have to wait in a crowd to get their vaccine. And so we want to move them through. And so, if we have some of those one-offs where people, for whatever reason can't make it, it's really not going to be a big issue for them. They can always notify us. We can get them rescheduled to another day. We tend to watch our doses pretty carefully. So, throughout the day, we'll only utilize what we need and open what we need. And the good news with some of the J&J type vaccines, especially, is it can be refrigerated for an extended amount of time. So we really won't have as much of those kind of extra doses at the end of the day. Additionally, we will work with, both our hospital locations and, the convention center site, that if we have some at the end of the day, to get people vaccinated. And if it means calling people on our wait list, we will absolutely do that. I would discourage people from just coming down to wait for a dose, because then we just end up kind of having some crowds that wait down there, and we can't guarantee anything to them. But definitely we will utilize our wait lists as appropriate, towards the end of the day, if we have those vaccines available.
And how does one get on your wait list?
Just by calling to schedule. So if we have people that we can't schedule for any reason, we put them on the wait list. And so that might be, just we don't have spots available for some reason, or they may not meet criteria, and we take their information down. So we'll keep that information.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you, Councilmember Banks. Just two more questions I have relative to the Ernest Morial Convention Center site is how you all will accommodate non-English speakers, and then accommodating our individuals with disabilities.
Sure. So we've definitely, gone through some of this, and so we'll have a couple different options for those that are non-English speaking residents. We will have both a phone system for translation of any number of, hundreds of languages that we use typically in our hospitals on a daily basis. Additionally, we will have on-site Spanish translators. We're also working on Vietnamese as well. And so we'll have that available, starting day one. As far as those with some mobility issues, we will have, some wheelchairs down there to help. We will allow family members to help, get people in and out. And then our parking will be located right across the street from the hall. So parking lot F, which is, you can enter off of Calliope and South Peters. That's going to be the entrance. We'll have some shuttle golf carts that the convention center utilizes to get people from vehicles up to the front door of Hall J. So we'll have a few different options for them as well once they're there to help, get them in, get them registered, and get them vaccinated.
And again, you say that is across from Hall F on Convention Center?
It's parking lot F across from Hall J. Hall J is going to be our
J.
vaccination site. Yes, sir.
Hall J is the entrance?
Yes.
Thank you, Dr. Elder. Ms. Dinkler? Not seeing any questions from council members. Councilmember Palmer?
Yes, I just really want to thank both of them. I mean, y'all have just been tremendous. Dr. Elder, I've just so enjoyed working with you in the past, and I just really want to say both of you together have just really given us a very well thought out plan. and your dedication through this process has really been truly amazing. I just really want to thank you. And I don't know if a lot of people realize what you did with the whole SODAT and helping the council put together that wonderful website and those resources early on in COVID, but it really was a tremendous success and it wouldn't have happened without you. So I just want to thank you for that as well.
Thank you so much, Councilmember Palmer. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Councilmember. And there's a big group at LCMC that's been working nonstop on this. And so I cannot, they're really the ones doing the hard work. They're there right now at the convention center getting ready. And so we'll continue to work hard as long as it takes to get people vaccinated. This is extremely important work. And we really are committed to this, and we want to see our community, back to normal and out of this pandemic. And so this is how we get out of it.
Well, I just want to say we're a leader in this, and we have been from the beginning. And a lot of it is because of both of you and the entire network, obviously in LCMC. But it really has been tremendous to watch. And also, I think a lot of it too is because I think the mayor comes from community-based. I think all of us worked in communities after Katrina, and we knew the importance of getting people and getting them services quickly. And I think y'all have just kind of used that real community-based, background and just kind of blew it out. And I think that proved that not only were we able to get testing out faster than any other city, but I think the same thing occurs with vaccinations. And so I'm just really proud of all of you. And it's really been phenomenal to watch all of you. So thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Councilmember Palmer. I believe you all wanted to touch on schools as well.
Mr. Chairman, I just briefly covered it with the Thrive Kids initiative. So I think we are good there.
3,000 vaccinated of the teachers.
Yeah. And I'll just share the ultimate goal is for us to do between 15 and 20,000 vaccinations of school team members in the first 4 to 6 weeks of their eligibility. And I think we're right on track to do just that.
Mm-hmm. And you have that list handy of what schools are this week? I know y'all put out a big list of, which is very informative of who you all vaccinated last week and this upcoming week.
We do, and I can share that with you. This is a great partnership really between Children's Hospital, who's leading the effort, but with NOLA Public Schools and New Orleans East Hospital, combination of school team members getting their shots either at Children's on site at their school or on site at New Orleans East Hospital. So a lot of options within the city to get that done.
Well, thank you. Thank you all for your work. Both of you, Dr. Elder and Ms. Dinkler. Seeing no other questions from my colleagues, I am going to see a public comment. Ms. Kondo, any public comment?
There is no public comment, Councilmember.
Well, thank you. And that ends the presentation for today. I thank you both and the people of LCMC for their continued work throughout the city and making sure our people receive the best health care that they need and get vaccinated. If y'all would like to add anything else.
Thank you for the opportunity, Mr. Chairman, and we look forward to continuing to working with all of you.
Thank you, Councilmember.
Thank you. Thank you both. With that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Moved by Councilmember Nguyen. Seconded by the chair. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 4 yeas, no nays, 5 yeas, no nays, and the meeting is adjourned. Thank you all. Thank Ms. Spears, Ms. Kondo,